Let's get right to the phone lines because Linda Jordan patiently waiting. Linda, thank you for being a part of Freedom Friday this afternoon.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Well, listen, I was talking about you right at the top of the hour, just reminding folks who you were. Let me do this. I want to give you as much time as possible, and plus I have some questions for you. And by the way, folks, if you'd like to call in and ask Linda a question or two, 623-1330, area code 850 is the number. You can call and talk to Linda Jordan personally. But Linda, I'm going to hush for just a moment. I'm going to let you tell folks exactly who you are and what brought you into this whole Obama scandal, this identity scandal, and the connections that you have with the Arpaio investigation and Susan Daniels, etc. And then shortly, 4 or 5 minutes after that, we'll take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to get you to tell the story of what has happened in this Supreme Court case in Washington State. And then I have some questions for you about that. Is that okay if we take it like that?
Oh, yeah, excellent.
Okay, all right,
Very good.
Talk to us. Tell us who you are and how you got involved in all of this.
Well, I'm an average person, an ordinary person. I'm a housewife, a mother, raised 3 children, live in Washington State. And, in 2008, when Obama came onto the scene, I was opposed to him. He stands for things that I adamantly oppose.
Right.
But I was content at that time to vote against him, do a little bit of research and encourage others to vote against him.
Right.
But around August or the summer of 2011, I read a report by Susan Daniels, a private investigator out of Ohio, about Obama's phony Social Security number,
right. So
which was issued.
So I'm sorry. So we've got a little delay. I'm so sorry. So, so in other words, you didn't really get involved in his identity scandal until 2011, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. Go ahead.
I read her report. I was very impressed by it. I did some research on her as much as I could, and I just thought she was a real stand-up person, an investigator who was well-respected in Ohio. The work that she does is used by lawyers in courtrooms all the time,
right?
And yet it was being ignored.
Yeah, we've had her on the program before, so yeah, you're right. She is a stand-up woman.
She is. So and then Terry Lakin and other instances of people that were sticking their neck out there,
right,
to do something, and nobody with the authority and the responsibility to defend our nation, defend the White House, to uphold the law was doing anything.
Right.
And I just thought, I can't continue to wait for someone to ride in on a white horse and save us.
Right.
We have to do something. Clearly, this is one of those circumstances in history at this point in time where we, the people, have to do something.
Yes, I agree.
And that included me, and I'm not a brave person, and I just thought I have to do something. In particular, I was thinking of Susan Daniels' research on the Social Security number. So I ruminated on it for a long time, and I decided that I was one of Barack Obama's employers and that I had the authority to run his Social Security number through what's a government-run program called the E-Verify system that employers use in order to determine if their employees are eligible to work in the United States.
All right, let me ask you a question there, because now I do not know the answer to this, and I probably should. As an employer, I mean, to use E-Verify, do you have to have special credentials or special permission, or can just anybody access it? Do you have to be an employer? I mean, tell us about that.
You have to be an employer.
Okay, and that's
so I was prepared. I knew for me it was a gray area. I'm sure legally, I was prepared to argue that I was one of his many employers.
Oh, okay.
I had the legal responsibility to find out if he was eligible to work.
Right.
So it's a chance I took. I prayed about it, thought about it a lot. My husband was not very happy, but I just felt that it really needed to be done. So I did that on August 2011, at the end of August, and it came back that he was not eligible to work in the United States, or he failed E-Verify, in other words.
Right. By the Social Security number that you used, which is the Social Security number that he's using right now.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. So I did that, and what was interesting is the very day that story broke, it was September 11th, 2011.
Oh, wow.
And I was at the grocery store, and I was kind of scared, I have to tell you. I was afraid of what would happen to me.
Right.
And so I was at the store. I bought my groceries, was checking out, and the cashier gives me my change, tells me how much I saved, give me my change, and she says, well, here you are, Mrs. Jordan, your change is 9/11. And then she kind of stops. She goes, you just got back 9/11 on 9/11. And I was encouraged by, of all things, this Safeway grocery store receipt, this flimsy little piece of paper that encouraged me to be brave in the defense of my country. I took that, for me, that was straight from God.
Yeah.
That, okay, Linda, have faith, have courage, and keep going forward. So I did that, and I think it had some impact, but of course not with people in authority and power. And so I spent a whole year working on a case to challenge Obama's placement, the placement of his name on the general election ballot here in Washington State.
Right. Linda,
and
are you there?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Go ahead. All right, so you spent a year challenging the placement of his name on the ballot. Go ahead.
Right. So I filed it in August 27th. It was dismissed on August 29th.
Uh-huh.
I filed an appeal to the Supreme Court in Washington State on September 4th. It was dismissed as frivolous on December 4th, and sanctions were awarded. And basically what that means is that if a lawyer can get a case dismissed based on it being frivolous, then they can get sanctions to pay the attorney fees.
Right.
If it's not found to be frivolous, they can't get that money,
right,
because I have the right to access our judicial system.
Right.
I can't be penalized for it. The only way to be penalized for it is if they say, oh, this is so frivolous, nobody with a brain in their head would even think any of this is true.
Right.
And so that's what a panel of 5 justices on the Washington State Supreme Court concluded, and they sanctioned me on January 10th, almost $13,000.
Yeah. All right. Here's what we're going to do, Linda. I want to ask you a lot of questions about all of that, because it just, your story just blows me away, and I'm sure our listeners have their jaws on the ground right now. So let's take a quick break. We're going to take a time out. When we come back, Linda Jordan will tell us her story and more about what happened with the Washington State Supreme Court fining her $13,000 because she challenged Barack Obama's eligibility to be president because the Social Security number that he is using was entered into E-Verify, and came back that he's not qualified to work in the United States of America. Linda Jordan, of course, is a homemaker out of Washington State, and she's been involved in the Obama identity crisis for several years. And she made headlines of WND and several other internet news sources some years back when she challenged Barack Obama's use of his Social Security number because she ran it in E-Verify, and it kicked it back as him being ineligible to work in the United States. So in the meantime, she wound up with her case coming before the Washington State Supreme Court, and instead of giving her any kind of due process or a hearing of the facts, hearing of the case, the state, a panel of 5 Supreme Court justices just dismissed it as frivolous and fined her $13,000 for filing a legal challenge against what appears to be an illegal president. Did I pretty much say it correctly, Linda?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, let me just ask you, Linda. So the Supreme Court dismisses your claim as frivolous, and you and I and our listeners know there's nothing frivolous at all about taking that Social Security number, which we know for a fact that he is using right now and has used for years, and putting it in E-Verify, and E-Verify kicking it back that it's ineligible, it's illegal, it's he's not qualified to work. In other words, he can't pick tomatoes in California, but
Right.
He's sitting in the White House as commander-in-chief. There's nothing frivolous about that. So the Washington State Supreme Court just dismisses it as frivolous, but did they give you any reasoning for that? Did they say why? Did they run the number? I mean, why would they dismiss it as frivolous? What do you know about that?
Yeah, there was no evidence given or no reason given by the Supreme Court, the panel of 5 judges, including the Chief Justice. They just said dismissed as frivolous, sanctions awarded. There was no evidentiary hearing at the Superior Court level. the Supreme Court justices just turned a blind eye to. I think I had 61 exhibits introduced as evidence. And the forged birth certificate was the primary one because that's what he used to prove that he was eligible to be on the ballot in Washington State.
Right.
That's what got him on the ballot and into the White House. And I was simply saying, forged documents, forged ID cannot get you into a cheap bar on a Saturday night. How can it get you into the White House?
Yeah. How can
it's such a bad forgery. It's such an obvious forgery.
Yeah. Yeah. How can it get you the codes to the nuclear armament of the number one superpower of the world? How can it make you commander-in-chief? And like you said, you can't even get into a bar, a cheap bar on a Saturday night. You can't pick tomatoes down here in Florida, but you can be the commander-in-chief. And the Supreme Court, Washington State Supreme Court says, well, that's frivolous. We're not. I mean, Linda, I guess we've gone down the rabbit hole. Alice in Wonderland. I mean, I remember, I'm naive enough to think that a state Supreme Court would take something like that and at least examine it just to see if you are a nut job or if, in fact, you're on to something. But apparently they didn't even look at it.
What's so ironic about this is in my research, I found case law in Washington State where an elector challenged somebody being elected as mayor or councilman or something because they lived in the wrong area.
Right.
And this person did the research and found evidence to prove that this person did not live where they were supposed to live in order to run for this office.
Right.
And the court took that evidence very seriously, and they looked at it as a prior fact, like they're supposed to, and they found that this guy was right. And yet here I am saying, look, here's evidence that the person who holds the office of the presidency has used forged identity documents in order to gain access to that office. Here's my evidence. Will you look at it? And they said no.
Yeah, and you had black and white evidence off the government website itself, E-Verify, and they wouldn't even look at it.
They wouldn't look at it. They wouldn't. I mean, we have black and white evidence of the forged birth certificate.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's done. That's a done deal.
Right.
There's no question that it's a forged document. And we have people that are willing and have signed their names onto affidavits, staked their reputation. Lord Monckton, other mathematicians from colleges that just say, look, the probabilities that this isn't forged are astronomical.
Right.
And, I mean, we have people that sign their names, Mara Zebes, Susan Daniels. Lots of individuals have signed their names. They're not hiding in the shadows Deep Throat and Watergate.
Sheriff Arpaio and Lieutenant Mike Zullo and 6 investigators and 2 forensics laboratories and 16 digital document experts.
And Lakin and lots of people that are getting punished, ridiculed, mocked, and being thrown into prison.
Yeah.
So, you got the liberal media who'll take the word of some guy with a pornographic nickname during the Watergate era.
Right.
But they won't take the word of people that have PhDs and who have literally written a book on Adobe Photoshop and can say without a doubt, this is a forged birth certificate. And so we have simply got to stand up to this, and we have to keep pushing. We have to keep coming forward with ways to finally, like someone said, find one honest judge or one judge with integrity.
Somewhere. I pray to God there's still one left in the United States. Linda, we're quickly running out of time. Quickly tell us, so you were fined $13,000. Tell us what's next for you. How can America help? How can the listeners of Freedom Friday help? Do you have a website where people can help donate to help you pay this fine? I mean, what's next? What are you doing? What can we do to help?
Okay, well, some really good people in the internet world came forward to start up a website for me, a legal defense fund, and it's called ObamaForgeries.com.